We should be live, okay. Welcome anybody who's watching so far. We've just got a little hello from Andrew Clark. So hello, Andrew, at Shedden. Oh, I don't know how to say that. Wymondham?
I think that's about right.
Yeah.
Apologies, Andrew, if we've started the
yes.
morning with incorrect pronunciation.
Yes, sorry about that. So hi, anybody who's watching, I'll just kind of introduce ourselves for a couple of minutes and just let anybody who's joining us join us. My name's Rachel Meadows. I'm the Volunteer and Community Development Manager here at UKMSA Men's Sheds, and I'm joined today by Joe Phillips. If you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, afternoon all. My name's Joe Phillips. I'm a trustee for UK Men's Sheds. I'm the safeguarding champion on the trustee board.
And Joe actually works for the Royal Voluntary Service, so you have a lot of to do with safeguarding in your day-to-day kind of normal job, don't you, Joe? If you want to just give us a brief rundown, just so everybody knows what you get up to.
Yeah, I've worked in the voluntary sector for 20 years, so safeguarding's always been part of my role, but particularly for the last 2 years, I've been the safeguarding team lead at Royal Voluntary Service for the NHS Volunteer Responders Programme, which has been the pandemic response. So we've been supporting all the clients and volunteers throughout the pandemic and responding to all the safeguarding and wellbeing alerts from that.
Yeah, so we're in good hands today. So just an introduction to the session. As I said, I'm Rachel, this is Joe. Session hopefully will last about an hour or so. It will be available afterwards. We should be able to kind of put this on the website, and we will have a list of useful links accompanying it. So don't worry too much about jotting down any websites that I mention. These will be made available afterwards. We do have some slides to go through. There's not a great deal. We're going to keep it quite light. But if you do have any questions or comments, please pop them in the comment box. You don't have to say where you're from, but if you'd like to introduce yourself and say where you're from, that'd be great. We'll come to the comments and questions at the end, purely because once I start my presentation, I'm not necessarily going to be able to see what pops up, but please leave it with us. If it's something we can't answer today, we will find out the answer and come back to you. So, as I say, today is all about safeguarding for sheds. It's really important that everybody understands what their responsibilities are as a shed and knows how to get support, raise a concern, or seek further information if you need it. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and put up my presentation. It's going to be helping along the way as well. And as I say, please leave a comment or question if you'd like to. So bear with me one moment. Okay. Right. Okay. Joe, just to check, can you see my presentation?
I can, Rachel, thank you.
Perfect. I'll hide that. Okay, so it's safeguarding for shedders. So your shed, what do you need and how do you find further information about safeguarding? Okay, so we'll make a start. Okay, so first of all, it's really important to talk about why safeguarding is essential for sheds. And when we talk about safeguarding, what do we mean? So the term safeguarding is used to define actions taken to protect vulnerable people from harm. So as shedders, you will work closely with vulnerable groups of people, and it's really important that you understand what safeguarding is and why it's important in your shed. So basically, everybody has the basic human right to live their lives free from abuse and to be safe and protected. There are certain factors that may make a person more vulnerable to the risk of harm, and these factors could include things like whether they're isolated or not, their age, so if they're very old or they're very young, if they have any communication difficulties, if they have a disability, if they have any physical or mental illness, if they've been bereaved and are feeling vulnerable, if they're experiencing loneliness, or if they have a previous history of abuse. So not all shedders will fall into these categories at all, but there is a greater chance that some shedders may be affected by one or more of the risk factors that I've just mentioned there. So safeguarding is essential for sheds. Anybody can be a victim of abuse, but sheds in particular, as I've just said, may have members who are vulnerable. If abuse is disclosed or someone has concerns, it's really vital that a shed knows what to do. So obviously, safeguarding is essential for sheds, so we're able to better recognise abuse and neglect, to help the people we support in our local communities, to help the members in our sheds to live a life free from abuse or the threat of abuse. we all need to know how to report concerns appropriately in a timely fashion, and we need to make sure that people in shedders feel more confident in responding to a disclosure of abuse or any kind of suspicion or concern of abuse. Okay, so what sheds need to have in place? This is really important. Sheds must have a safeguarding policy in place. So this policy should outline the safeguarding procedures and important safeguarding contacts in case concerns are raised or abuse is disclosed. So if your shed is linked to another organisation, for example, part of a community hub, or if it's run by another charity such as Age UK, these organisations will have their own safeguarding policies in place, and it's likely that you would follow them. But for anybody else, you would need your own policy. You could write this yourself, but if you don't have one in place and you're looking to put one, we do have a template that can be downloaded and edited specifically for your shed, which is available on our website. So it's in the members area, so you do have to be a member to access it, and it's under the safety and risk management heading in the members area. So this can be adapted as individual sheds need, and this basic policy references the Care Act 2014. It outlines kind of the definitions of care and support. It talks about types of abuse. It gives information on recording, guidance on how to share safeguarding information with shedders, and it also includes a template reporting form, which is really important as well, that you have this in place. Sheds, you don't have to use our template, but it is available and many people find it useful, or even to look at as a starting point. So you do have to have a safeguarding policy in place. A policy summary is also a really good way of sharing safeguarding information with shed members in an accessible way. So this could just be a page long, and this supporting document will list the main safeguarding principles and highlights the named safeguarding contacts within a shed. So as part of your policy, you will be asked to kind of name somebody who's responsible for overseeing safeguarding in the shed. And that could be a trustee, it could be a committee member, or it could just be a volunteer, a responsible shedder who's willing to take on that role. If somebody in the shed had a concern of abuse, they would contact the named person in the policy. So again, this policy summary is downloadable on our website as well, so that you can customise it. If you have a shed welcome pack or induction documents that you give out to new members, excuse me, you could include this policy summary in your induction packs, or handbooks, so every shedder has access to it. As I say, it's kind of a page long, so it's easy to understand. It has very brief information on and the named contacts as well. So we will talk about later where to find further support and learning, other important contacts and places to refer to, because obviously you'll be spread all over the place. Each procedure will be slightly different in different areas. Okay. Okay, so it's really important that sheds understand about different types of abuse as well, and what we mean when we talk about abuse. So abuse is mistreatment by any person or persons that violates a person's human and civil rights. So it can vary from treating somebody with disrespect in a way that significantly affects the person's quality of life to causing actual physical or mental suffering. It's important to know as well that abuse can also include the threat of abuse. So it could be actual harm or the threat of harm. There are 10 categories of abuse when we're talking about adult safeguarding, but there are more if we're talking about children and young people. Different types of abuse have different indicators. And what we mean when we say an indicator is the thing that you might notice that would highlight this concern to you. So kind of different behaviours or different behaviours or different signs that somebody might be being abused. Okay. So you're not expected to know all the different indicators for every single type of abuse because there are really a lot. But it's really important to remember that there are some really common indicators for all different types of abuse. And these would mostly include kind of changes in personality or somebody seeming withdrawn or afraid. So obviously you get to know the members in your shed. You'll know if somebody's kind of acting out of sorts or if they seem a bit more withdrawn than usual, or if they seem upset, or if they've got any major changes in their personality. These would be kind of indicators, a general indicator that something's not right with somebody. It's always better to ask how somebody is if you notice that there's anything wrong with them, something, as we say, like a change in personality or them seeming withdrawn. It might not have anything to do with safeguarding at all, but somebody may open up to you about something else. So don't be afraid to ask how somebody is, or say if they seem a little bit not themselves. And we will talk about a little bit more about this in a minute. So you can search online to find more detail about what constitutes abuse and all the different indicators. The Social Care Institute for Excellence has a really good list of types of abuse and the indicators, or your local Safeguarding Adults Board website would also have this information on it. But obviously I'll just quickly go through them. So obviously we've got financial abuse, and that's to do with anything regarding kind of money or somebody's assets. We've got neglect or acts of omission, and that's if somebody's responsible, somebody has, say, a carer or family member kind of looking after them who may not be meeting all their needs. There's sexual abuse, which is if somebody's being forced into kind of sexual acts against their consent. There's emotional or psychological abuse, and that can include bullying and intimidation. There's physical abuse, and that could include anything from hitting, pushing, hair pulling, you name it. Domestic abuse is something that takes place within somebody's home. There's modern slavery, which is when somebody's forced into servitude. Self-neglect, which is if somebody's not able to meet their own needs. And that could be anything to do with they may not be eating properly, they may not be able to kind of stay hygienic. We've got organisational or institutional abuse. And that could be, as it sounds, carried out in an institution such as a hospital or care home setting, but it could also mean abuse from, say, for example, a professional carer or medical professional. And there's discriminatory abuse as well. And then that's anything that if somebody's being abused for any reason because of one of the protected characteristics, such as their sexuality or age. So obviously you can look up those yourself. You can find out a lot more information about each type of abuse and the indicators online. It's also important to remember that anybody can be an abuser. Okay. Jo, anything else to add on that?
No, I think, as you said, Rachel, the important thing for everybody today to remember is that you're not going to remember all the indicators and all the signs and symptoms. It's just about asking and making sure that people are okay. And if you notice is there a change in somebody's behaviour, particularly over a period of time, that you actually are confident in being able to just check in and see how somebody is, and then being confident in what that next steps could be to help that individual get the right support in place.
Yeah, definitely. And that's it. It's about, as Jo said, over time, you'll get to know the members of your shed, what they're like, what their home situations are, what they have going on outside the shed. So I guess you'll kind of build up a picture of what somebody's life kind of looks like. And just because you're asking how somebody is, or asking if there's anything kind of going on at home, or whatever you're asking, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily asking them if they're being abused. It's about having that kind of gentle conversation to start somebody opening up really if they need to. Okay, so in your shed, it's important to think about what kind of safeguarding concerns you might encounter. Okay, so abuse in community settings is really rare. It's more likely that somebody might be abused in their home and disclose this information to you in a safe space, such as the shed. So this means you're probably less likely to have a shedder abusing another shedder in the shed context, but you may have shedders attending who are either victims of abuse or even perpetrators of abuse. We will talk later on about getting support for victims and perpetrators of abuse later if you do kind of have concerns or want to know more about that. But in the shed, there might be kind of certain types of concerns that you're more likely to encounter. So just a couple of examples of these. So as I mentioned before, self-neglect. So you might notice somebody in your shed who's having trouble meeting their own needs, and this could be intentionally or unintentionally. For example, it could mean that they're not eating properly, they're not looking after their personal hygiene, they're not able to manage their own finances, they might not be able to get to their healthcare appointments or be able to care for themselves properly in general. So in a case like this, there should be support available from local authorities who might be able to put a care package in place. They might be able to assess somebody's benefits or refer that person to some further support that can help them. It's important as well to remember, again, just thinking about who's in your shed and what you know about them. It's important to remember that everyone's standard of looking after themselves does look different. So, for example, different levels of hygiene. Somebody may wear less clean clothes, and that might be normal for that person. So it's really important that you watch out for changes, as Joe said, changes over time, and remember what is regular for that person. If somebody's gone from being always really, really clean and well turned out to suddenly turning up being dishevelled and dirty, this might kind of raise a concern for you because that's not normal behaviour for them. And disclosure of abuses as well, something that you may encounter as well in your shed. So as you said, it's rare that abuse will happen in a community setting, but your shed might be the safe space where somebody feels comfortable to share something that's happened to them with you. So it's possible that a fellow shedder may tell you about abuse they've experienced, and they might not even realise that it's abuse. They might just talk about something that's happened to them. For example, they may make a comment to you about somebody who's helping them with their lasting power of attorney or their will, or supporting them with other financial documents. And I think Joe's got a bit of an example about this, if you'd like to share that, Joe.
Yeah, I think this is just an example of when something that can be quite an innocent conversation can potentially tip over into a safeguarding concern. And it's something that can quite innocently be part of the chat over a cup of tea and your biscuit in the break time at the shed, where one of the shedders says to you, oh, Bob's helping me sort my finances out. He's been absolutely brilliant. He's been working with me, sorting all my paperwork out, and he keeps saying he doesn't want anything for it, but I've told him I'll see him right. I've told him he's all right, and he's got me the right documents and stuff, and he's helping me sign stuff, and he's witnessing everything for me. And that can be a very innocent conversation, and it might be two friends supporting each other, and it might be something that once you've asked a little bit more, you actually have no concern about. But actually, on the other side, it may be something that could be a first indicator of financial abuse, because Bob may be intentionally or even unintentionally putting himself in a position of concern. So being able to offer somebody financial advice and being that person who signs that paperwork, particularly things around wills and lasting powers of attorney, is actually a very specific requirement in terms of understanding and responsibility. And actually that might not be appropriate for Bob to be doing.
Yeah.
Does that individual's family know that Bob's involved? If that individual doesn't have family, is Bob the most appropriate person to be doing so? And is Bob going to gain from that will, from that lasting power of attorney, is also something that would be the concern that would move it towards being a safeguarding concern. So a quite innocent conversation can go one way or the other. And until you've actually asked that other question, then you're not actually going to know. But if you do have an additional concern, then that's at the stage where you would need to, effectively, it's a bit of a red flag that you just really need to raise awareness and say to somebody else, actually, I've got a little bit of a worry here. I think we need to do something about it.
Yeah. And as Joe says, this is kind of the first step in kind of having those conversations around that potentially innocent conversation that you've had, to find out a little bit more detail. Just because you ask a question doesn't mean you're accusing Bob of doing anything. It's just to find out a little bit more information. Another example of this, for example, somebody might kind of say, oh, my son says the hospital doesn't know what they're talking about and he's not going to be taking me to my appointments anymore. So again, this kind of comment might raise a concern for you. Well, how's this person going to get to their appointments? If their son's refused to take them, does this mean he's kind of against the medical treatment this person's receiving? But it could be, once you kind of explore that a little bit more and ask a question, that this person has other people available to take them to the appointments. They might be able to get there themselves. It could be a throwaway comment because, their son might not have had a bad experience at a hospital. It could be absolutely anything that's totally innocent, or it could be that now that the son's refused to take them, this person might not be able to access their medical treatment. So again, example of a throwaway comment that could raise a red flag, that with a couple of easy questions you could ask, that would kind of clear that up, or kind of raise it as a concern that you might need to take further. So have a little think about kind of things like that you might encounter with your shed, the kind of members who are in your shed. And think about what people have got going on as well. As we say, it's kind of one comment will not give you the whole picture. It's really important that you kind of know your members, and know if there is anything to be concerned about. Kind of notice those changes over time.
Rachel, I think it's also important to say to people is that people feel that they're interfering. Often
Yeah.
safeguarding becomes interference. Actually, it's not. You're just asking that next question of, just tell me a little bit more about that. Can you explain that? Can you describe that a little bit more? It's those TED questions that often gets called, the tell me, explain me, describe to me a little bit more. Can open up a whole new can of worms, or can actually, clear up a lot of confusion very easily. And it's not you interfering, it's you ensuring that somebody's well-being is kept safe and they are being protected. So I always think of it as, if that was me, would I want somebody to have asked me that question? And I think the biggest thing I've learned throughout my career and, working in safeguarding so intensely, particularly over the last 12 months, is that a lot of people that you speak to who are victims of abuse, always say, I wish somebody had asked me earlier. Yeah. I wanted to be able to tell somebody, and actually having that opportunity to tell somebody was a huge step for them.
Yeah.
So don't assume that somebody has already asked that difficult question. You may be the first person to have ever asked that individual that difficult question.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid of it. If you have overstepped the mark, they'll tell you. And you quite innocently, you can laugh it off, and, it becomes part of, them just being aware that you're looking out for them. But if there is something to disclose, or there is some concern, if they are in a position where they want to be able to tell somebody, then you've given them that open door and that opportunity to do so.
Yeah, definitely. And that's it. People sometimes, as Joe said, think of safeguarding as interfering or telling on somebody, but actually it could ensure that somebody gets the support that they need, to enable them to kind of, as we said earlier, to live their life without threat of harm or abuse, and putting something in place to ensure their well-being. Okay. So obviously, when we've talked about kind of starting those conversations, and maybe what you might be looking for and how to recognise abuse. So at UKMSA, we use what's called the 4Rs to remind us of how to effectively record and report a concern. So a lot of organisations use this, and you're welcome to adopt it as well. So you should make sure, though, that it is in line with your shed zone safeguarding policy, that this kind of fits in with your procedure. But essentially, it's just a good reminder to remember what to do. So obviously, we talked a little bit about recognizing abuse. So think about what you might encounter in your role as a shedder and how to recognize abuse. So this will include, as we've said, kind of thinking about all the different types of abuse. Those indicators, as you said, you don't need to kind of learn the whole list of them, but think about changes in personality, if people are withdrawn, and noticing differences with people over time. It's about kind of picking up on those, as Joe said, red flags, throwaway comment, innocent conversation. If it's something that doesn't sit right with you, it's important that at this stage that you can ask questions. So, as we said, important that you can discuss any initial concern that you might have with the person themselves. So don't go off kind of telling somebody else. It's ask those questions to the person first. Have an informal chat with them. Do it in a private place. And if you are worried, tell them that you're a bit worried about them. So it could be that they clear the matter up, as Joe's given in those examples, and there's absolutely nothing to worry about. Or it could be that they disclose further information to you, or that they ask for help. So if somebody does go on to disclose an incident of abuse, it's then really important that you record this properly. So the next R, record, is ensuring that you record all the facts and capture the essential information. So you probably would have to do this after your initial conversation with the person, as it's not always appropriate to kind of whip out a pad and a pen and start taking notes if somebody's sharing something difficult for them. You want to be sensitive and you want to listen properly to what somebody's telling you. So when somebody is sharing something with you, it's important that you clarify the information that you've been told, maybe reflect it back to the person to make sure that you understand and that you've not misinterpreted anything. So those kind of reflecting questions where you say, am I right in thinking this is what you mean? Those kind of questions can ensure that you're getting the right end of the stick, that you're interpreting that information correctly. Record your notes as soon as you can after the disclosure or the incident. So, as I say, it's not always appropriate to do so when somebody's talking to you, but once you've got 5 minutes after they've kind of moved away from you, jot down everything that you can remember. It's really crucial to ensure you give an accurate report. So tell the person that you are going to make some notes after your conversation, and think about these kind of important questions or the kind of information that you need to know. So what happened? When did it happen? Who said what was going on? What was happening at the time? Who was around? So the kind of what, where, why, when, how, all those questions. I mean, you want facts. So when you're asking the person, do get dates off them if you can. And also if they've used kind of quotes, use the person's own words wherever possible. So, use quotation marks, use their own words if they've shared something specific with you. Go on, Jo, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, Rachel, on top of that, the only thing I think, again, from experience, is accept what that person says.
Mm-hmm.
Don't question it. That's not your role. You're not here to be an investigator. You're not here to put it right at that moment in time. You're here to accept that information and be that listening ear. And that is a real difference in a role. You're not, you will be sympathetic, you will be empathetic, but you're not there to make it all better. You're there to listen and to ensure that you get that information correct at that point in time, and that you can then enable that information to be passed on elsewhere to enable that person to get the right support. So it's about staying calm when somebody discloses to you, particularly face to face. That can often be really difficult to do. Things that people tell you can make you upset as well. So you have to remain calm. You have to not show shock as well, because some things can be quite shocking to hear. And actually listen carefully, look directly at that person, be empathetic, but don't lead them as well in their statements. As you say, it's those important questions about, tell me what happened, can you explain? So that you actually get that factual information. And then the other really important thing is to be very clear that now that disclosure has been made to you, you cannot keep that confidential. And that's often the most difficult part of that conversation, because somebody will tell you something and then say, but you can't tell anybody. I don't want you to tell anybody. Actually, you now have a duty of care to make sure that that individual is safe going forward, and that the next appropriate steps can be put in place. And so being able to disclose that information to the next relevant person to do so, and only to the next relevant person to do so, is the important part of the next step.
Yeah, definitely. And where you can as well, you, as Jo said, you will have to tell somebody that you're going to pass that information on, but ask permission as well. Let the person know that you are worried about them, and the only reason, can I share this with somebody because I want to help you get the help that you need. It's important that you can do that if you can. And I think, as Jo said as well, it's about being empathetic, listening to somebody, not being shocked, being a friend to them, being as you would in your shed, but still kind of managing to get that important information and record it accurately. So, it is quite difficult. But once you've kind of got that information and you've kind of made your notes, then what do you do with it? So the next step is obviously reporting it. So as Jo said, you're only going to be reporting it to the relevant person. It's not your, you don't need to be telling every other member of the shed about it. So as I mentioned before in the safeguarding policy, there is opportunity in there to kind of put named contacts down as somebody that you can report safeguarding concerns to. So that might be your shed's designated safeguarding officer, or kind of responsible shedder, whatever you want to call them. So, you can go to them with your concern, with your notes, and they can escalate this to the relevant authorities. So as individual sheds, you should follow your reporting procedure, and you don't have to report safeguarding matters to UKMSA as an organisation. Your shed is its own organisation with its own policy. You follow your procedure, and then you would report any concerns to the local authority, or whatever your procedure is. Okay, and as Jo said as well, really important always to remember that we're not there to investigate. Sometimes you may not find out what's happened after you've reported a concern. It's not your job to find out. So, all you have to do is pass that information on to the shed's designated safeguarding officer, who will then do their part. And that may be kind of where it ends with you. Go on.
The other thing I think, just to add to that, is if somebody has disclosed something to you where you have a serious concern for their safety going forward, then you do have that ability, and that obviously, please do have that confidence to then phone 999.
Yeah.
If somebody particularly has disclosed something where you think if they return to their property, their life would be at risk, or they are at risk of harm, then obviously you need to keep them safe.
Yeah.
So your first and foremost responsibility at that point is to keep that person safe, if that is the case. So it is unlikely, probably in a situation in a shed, that you would be in that scenario. We really hope that is the case. But if that is very much so, and you think that somebody's at a serious risk of harm, do not be afraid of phoning 999.
Yeah.
We speak to them in my role. We speak to the police, the ambulance service, the local authorities on a regular basis every single day. And the constant feedback that we get is, thank you for telling us. Thank you for letting us know. People would rather that there be a report put in place so the appropriate people can then pick up that information and take it on to the next stage than not know.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
the one thing we described safeguarding is like a jigsaw puzzle. Lots of people often have lots of little different bits of information, and actually you might be seeing one tiny little bit of information that individual has disclosed to you. If you keep that to yourself, then that might not then be matched up with another little bit of information that potentially their GP knows, or adult social care already knows. And actually what we want to do is help build that jigsaw puzzle to enable that whole piece to be able to be seen, and the whole picture to be able to be seen, to keep that individual safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's it. The shed may not be the only person, may not be the only group they go to. As Joe said, it could be GP, it could be other community groups may have raised a concern. Yeah, there's a lot of information out there, and you may only hear a snippet of it. And then, as Joe's kind of said, the final R is refer. So again, that's just really important. Is the person in immediate danger, or would they be in danger if they kind of returned home or to wherever they've come from? So if so, ring the police. Don't delay on that. And if not, you would follow your safeguarding procedure to report that concern. And you could talk about support with the person themselves as well. There could be, they may be willing to kind of refer themselves to support. You could help them to do that if they want you to. And we're going to talk a little bit now about kind of how you can refer to further support. Okay, so where can sheds get further safeguarding support and information? So there's loads of useful places where your shed can get more support about safeguarding. So obviously on our website, we've got our policy templates on there. Have a little read of those. See if that's something that would work for your shed, and customise. If you've got a local shed ambassador that you're in touch with, or if you're a member of a regional shed network, they may be able to signpost you to local support. They're not safeguarding experts, but they might be able to put you in touch with your local authority if you're unsure about how to contact them. Your regional shed network as well may be supported by an organisation such as a local CVS. They also might have information on safeguarding, or they might even kind of run safeguarding training or courses locally. So that might be useful to find out about. Your area's local safeguarding adults board website would also be really useful to be aware of. So generally this will give information and provide links to all the local authorities in your region, and should include information such as how to raise a concern, and again probably will have on there about types of different types of abuse and indicators. Depending on each region, there might also be other useful information about training, local events, or information for kind of professionals or members of the public. So that'll be a really useful website to use. We will put a list, I think I said at the start, we will do a list with these useful links on, so you can easily kind of find what I'm talking about. So don't worry too much about kind of jotting this down. But the Ancraft Trust do have a find your nearest safeguarding adults board webpage, where you can literally scroll down the list, find yours, and it will have the link to it. So that's really useful to be aware of.
The other thing, just to add for that, Rachel, for people's knowledge, is that a lot of your local authority, and that doesn't matter whether you're tertiary or secondary tiers, whether you've got district councils or county councils, if you go onto your a local council website and put in adult safeguarding, it will take you to that page.
Yes.
Lots of them have what they now call single points of access to any type of support that the local authority will have in place. So children's services is split from adults, just for information. So if it was a report around safeguarding of children, then that would go in one direction and adults would go in another. Mental health trusts in some areas are also integrated into those boards. In other areas, they're completely different. So we can't give you a catch-all, this is what happens in your area, because every single local authority is different. And believe you me, it's our biggest headache, particularly when you work in a national organisation, to negotiate everybody's local areas. But if you are struggling to find the right place, single point of access is often the language used, or just put adult safeguarding in and it will send you to that right route.
Yeah. And that's it. It's being aware of your local procedures, your local support, making a note of that number, knowing who to contact, or knowing how to easily access that website is so important. And obviously there's loads of places you could signpost to that provide information and support about safeguarding. So I'm not going to kind of list them all, but as I say, I will make a short list available with kind of the main support, including a lot of NHS links. But one useful resource is the NHS Safeguarding app. So this is something you can download and put on your phone. It's been developed to act as a comprehensive resource for professionals, healthcare professionals, carers, and members of the public. It's 24-hour mobile access. And also provides up-to-date legislation and guidance across kind of the safeguarding topic. So it also provides information about how to report a concern, and does also include a directory of contacts for every local authority in England. It is England only, I'm afraid. But when I do the list, we will put some Scottish links on there as well.
And if you haven't used the app, it is great. I use it. It's the first thing we use with training with our team. We in a work capacity, we get everybody to ensure that it's on their work mobiles. It's great to have. It's that confidence when you're out and about that you're not in your local area, you're not quite sure where to go. It's got everything on there, and it is a great app to be able to use. So if you don't do anything else after today, I would suggest download the NHS app, and at least you've got that confidence that you've got some information with you at all times.
And I will include the link in that list of how to find it. And on the link, it kind of has instructions of how to download it, depending on which mobile phone you kind of use. So it should be quite straightforward for you. Okay, so also there's loads of other charities out there that may support people affected by abuse, whether that's victims or perpetrators. And often, different types of abuse will have their own specific charities that support them. So, for example, if somebody's been affected by modern slavery, there's organisations out there that will specifically support people who've been affected by that. So probably best to just kind of search online for the most appropriate organisation, because if I produced a list, it would be very lengthy. But have a little look and see what's out there. There is also a government safeguarding portal which focuses on raising a safeguarding concern, where the perpetrator is actually one of the trustees, volunteers, or committee members of your organisation. So in this case, if somebody in your shed, as we say, a volunteer, trustee, or committee member was the perpetrator of abuse, you would need to kind of follow a slightly different procedure, and this government portal is really useful for that. So you would have to report your charity, your shed, to the Charity Commission, and follow the kind of flow chart online on the website. So it offers a step-by-step guide to doing that, identifies the right people to contact, and gives kind of resources and advice as well. And that site is only for England and Wales, just so you know. But again, I'll include the link to that in the list. And then also just a useful thing that you may find useful, and Joe, I know your shed does this, is having a health and wellbeing folder or file. So I don't know if you want to explain what's in yours and why it's useful.
Yeah, it's the type of things that, when you're out and about, you pick up. And I think lots of GP surgeries have them. And we picked up the same thing. Lots of care associations used to create their own folders of just useful information. And I'm sure when lots of shedders are out and about, they pick up leaflets of things that are available. And actually, it's just a really nice thing to have in your shed, so that somebody can informally flick through it and see what's about in your local area. So it may be details of local carer association, charity groups, community groups. For us particularly, what we've then also done is put that safeguarding information in the front. So we've got the information around who to contact, with the telephone number, the 24-hour access telephone number to the Adult Safeguarding Board, how you would refer somebody into that, and very easy, steps of what you would need. And for most referrals, you simply need somebody's full name, address, the date of birth, and you'll be asked if you've got their permission to refer. If you haven't got their permission to refer, then you may be asked to go away and actually speak to somebody else in a statutory organisation to make another referral. So, for example, if you were in your shed, you might need to go back to that individual and say, would you be happy if we went back to your GP? Or you went back to your GP and asked them to make the referral. So that may be an incident in where your ongoing referral isn't accepted, but there's always an opportunity to be able to then get around that effectively by going back to a GP or a healthcare professional to make that referral on somebody's behalf.
Yeah.
And then the other information which we always find very useful is links to organisations around mental health. So, have those numbers in there for the Samaritans, for Mind, for local counselling services, drop-in community groups where people can go to group sessions, as well as having the mental health crisis team access number. So every area will have a 24-hour crisis number. So if somebody is in mental health distress at any time of day or night, then they are able to seek and access professional support.
Yeah. And it's just about making that information accessible to people in your shed. As Joe said, it's in a kind of a file where everybody knows where it is. It's not locked away in a cabinet somewhere. If a member of the shed needs to kind of find that information, discreetly, they should be able to do that. There are kind of posters as well that you could put up. Again, with what Joe said, kind of local adult social services number on there, or mental health crisis team, something like that. And the coffee and tea area might be a good shout as well, just so, as we say, it's accessible to everybody in the shed. And if somebody needs to find that information, they can do quickly and easily.
And it's great, obviously we've moved into November, it's Movember, the type of campaigns that UKMSA are promoting around prostate cancer awareness, suicide awareness, prevention courses, all that type of thing are as much appropriate to your shedders as to the shed leaders and anybody else out there in the community. So anybody who happens to pick up any of those type of leaflets, be encouraged to add them to your folder. So you've got things that are there for everybody and anybody, and that people can actually, just pop along, have a look at, and browse whilst they're having the cup of tea.
Yeah, definitely. And as well, I know I mentioned the local Safeguarding Adults board in your region as well. As I said on there, sometimes they will have training available. So it could be as well that there's stuff going on in your area that your shed could access, whether that's every member of the shed if they want to, or it may just be committee members or trustees are able to access kind of free training about safeguarding. So check what's in your area as well, so you feel confident in providing this information to your shedders and supporting each other. And also finding out those kind of local, what's available locally is so important as well, because we don't have that information. Every area is different. Okay, kind of coming towards the end now. Just some really important points to remember. Obviously, as we've said earlier, safeguarding is not about getting somebody into trouble or interfering. It's about well-being and looking after people. So these are the people that you spend time with, people in your shed who go there to be safe and to enjoy themselves. So it's really important that you look out for each other and notice any changes. Raising a safeguarding concern can lead to somebody getting the support that they need. It's not your responsibility to kind of put things in place for somebody, but by raising that concern, it will highlight what somebody might need and enable them to live a kind of safer life. It's really important that we're not afraid to ask questions if somebody reaches out to us, or if we notice something. As Joe said earlier, it's about kind of having those kind of, those questions where you say, can you tell me more about that, or describe that to me? It can be a totally innocent comment that somebody's made, but if it doesn't feel right, it's really important that we ask a question. Again, as Joe said, if that was you, you would want somebody to kind of ask that question to you. It may be the first time somebody's actually asked that person that question to find out more information. And sometimes people are sharing something because they're looking for help. It might be uncomfortable. It might feel a bit out of our comfort zone to kind of ask these questions, but be confident. And at the same time, as we said earlier, respect that person's privacy. So have a chat to them separately, away from everybody else, not in front of everybody. And again, your shed is not an investigating organisation. No matter what your professional background, you're not there to investigate. your responsibility is simply to raise that concern. So kind of recognise if there's something going on, record it, report it, and if necessary, refer to emergency services. And we cannot promise to keep a confidence if somebody is at risk of harm. And Joe highlighted this earlier. It's really hard because it could potentially jeopardise your relationship with that person. But at the end of the day, their safety is paramount. It's really important that, we look out for people's well-being. And, as we said earlier, if you can ask permission, let them know that you're going to have to take it further because you're worried about them. Ask permission if you can tell somebody in order to put support in place for them. If somebody's in immediate danger, ring 999. But yeah, it's just useful to think about as individuals, if it was somebody you cared about who was experiencing abuse or the threat of abuse, you would want that person to get the support that they needed. So that's kind of the important thing to think about there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, so just please bear with me. Okay. So I'll just have a little check on the comments and just see if there's anybody said anything that we might want to address. So somebody's asked, is the presentation available to download? Yes, I think we'll be able to put it on the website. So those slides should be available. Also this recording as well. So our kind of chat through it, or the kind of discussion about it. And also the list as well. So having that list of useful links will accompany this as well. So you should be able to kind of easily find all the things I've been talking about, the link to the NHS app, the links to finding your own local authority, safeguarding board. And then, somebody else has said, my thought is to keep a copy of this for reference, which members can look at should they wish. I'm assuming that you mean the presentation, but yes, you could do that. You could print it off if you want. Hopefully if that makes it a bit easier for somebody to kind of, glance at those kind of takeaway points, see the summaries, see the list of different types of abuse there. Yes, definitely print it off. But also make sure that they have access to the safeguarding policy and policy summary as well. They're your most important documents. And then we've just got a hello there from Burgess Hillshed. Hi, Mrs. Patel. Thank you for watching. So yeah, that was it for questions. So I don't know if you've got any more questions, me and Joe can kind of chat for 5 minutes about safeguarding. And if you've got any comments or questions, please post them if we've not covered anything that you'd like to know about. And yeah, other than that, we'll finish in a few minutes. So Joe, I don't know if any other kind of examples that you can think of that may crop up in a shed, or obviously anonymously, anything that you might share.
I think one of the other big things I've learned, particularly, is sort of when have you got your shedder hat on, and when is that the responsible shedder hat compared to me, Joe, as a shedder just turning up to somebody's front door. So we did a session a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, where this example works for anybody when you are representing your group. Yeah. So if you are running an event as your shed, and as the shedder on that particular day, you are visiting somebody else's house, and when you knock at that front door, you think something's a bit odd. You don't get the response that you were anticipating. You were perhaps coming to knock me up to come and pick something up from my house, but you don't get an answer. You can hear the dog barking, the milk bottles are still on the street. At that point, you might have a concern. So perhaps you bang on the door for the neighbour, and we would naturally all do this in terms of, is Joe okay? Yeah. Who could we contact? Does anybody know any family member? Do we need to phone the police? Do we need to get the ambulance around? What do we need to do? That's great. We all kick into that mode. But the thing in terms of you need to think around in terms of safeguarding is, have you gone there that day representing your group? Have you turned up on the doorstep as the responsible shedder for your shed? And if so, then that is when it becomes a reporting requirement for your shed as well. So in terms of your policy, just go back and think about that type of incident. You might also then need to go back and say to your responsible shedder, the designated safeguarding officer, I turned up at Joe's house, there was no answer. I could hear the dogs barking. We did a 101 call, and we got the police to come around to do a welfare check on it. So that becomes a safeguarding incident, even though it's not happened in the shed, because you're there with your shedder's hat on. And it's just that.
Yeah.
Oh, I think I dropped out there. I don't know if
Sorry.
everybody else did.
Dropped out just for a couple of seconds. I think you were just saying it's
Yes.
about knowing, when you've got your shed hat on, kind of representing your group and kind of there in I guess official business mode. I suppose
Yes,
is the difference, isn't it?
it is.
Yeah, and somebody's just kind of put. So we've got a hello from Swanick, so maybe that's Charlie. Hi, Charlie Parks. But also somebody's put on here template policy for sheds in the open access area of the website. Okay, sorry, that was my mistake. So sheds don't need to be members to download it and use it. Such an important sheds, it was decided to make it available to everybody. Sorry, that was my mistake. If you are not a member shed, you can still access the template policy for safeguarding and the policy summary in our resource area. So do have a look. If you're not a member shed, have a look and see if that's appropriate for you to use, definitely. But hopefully it's just it's about having a bit of confidence, isn't it? Kind of knowing the members of your shed, speaking to each other, as Joe said, noticing changes over time. And if anything doesn't sit right with you, if you go home from the shed and you don't feel comfortable about something, or if you've gone to bed at night and you're still thinking about something, that's the time when you have to think, actually, I need to have that conversation or ask further details. And, it might be the next day, you might not be able to stop thinking about that comment somebody said. As long as you kind of address it as soon as you can, that's the main thing.
And a lot of what we will do in sheds is preventative. It won't be a declaration of abuse in most cases. It will be you spotting a sign or a symptom or a bruise on somebody's arm, or noticing that they've perhaps lost a lot of weight and are looking a bit more disheveled. So they're perhaps not looking after themselves in the same way as maybe we would hope that they could be able to, particularly as people age. A lot of people don't want to accept that next step of need of some additional assistance. And it's actually perhaps at that stage where, as a shed, you are able to help enable somebody to get that next step of support, which will mean that they can live longer at home and live an independent, healthier, happier life at home for longer.
Yeah.
And it's thinking of it in that way. A lot of safeguarding is preventative work as well. So please don't be afraid to ask that question. It is about just making sure somebody can live safe and well.
Yeah, definitely. And if you do have any kind of questions, obviously, as I say, I will produce that list. But in the meantime, come to, you can email us as staff here. If you contact our admin at ukmsa.org.uk, if there is something, if you've got any general questions about safeguarding, obviously, if you had a concern or an alert, you would follow your own procedure or alert the authorities as needed, or 999 if it was an emergency. But if you have a general question about anything to do with the policy, or wanted to kind of find out more and you don't know where to go, get in contact with us, and we'll be able to kind of put you in the right direction. But if there's no more comments, thank you for everybody for watching, and I hope this has been useful. And thank you to Joe for your time and expertise as well. Really, really helpful. And yeah, please do get in touch if you are kind of doing anything around Movember as well. As we talked about, kind of promoting health and well-being, please let us know if you're doing anything exciting for that. And I will just do one final shout out. It's our AGM on Wednesday. I think it's at 6:30. If your shed is a member shed and you've not registered yet, please do. And the way you do that is you email our admin address, which is admin@ukmsa.org.uk, and please include the name of your shed in that email. Say you'd like to register and include the name of your shed, not an individual's name. And just a little comment here from Mrs. Patel. Thanks so much. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jasmine, and thank you for having us. Thank you for joining us, and I hope it was useful. And yes, see you Wednesday at the AGM. I will be there. So yeah, thanks all, and thanks, Joe. And we'll finish there a couple of minutes early. And yes, watch this space on the website. It will be available afterwards. So thanks all, and have a lovely day. Bye, Joe. Thanks.
Bye.